My daughter's phone number disappeared from my recent calls list. Not because I deleted it, because 3 months had passed without her calling me. 3 months since I'd heard from any of them, my daughter Jasmine, my son-in-law Kenneth, my grandchildren Aiden and Zara. The calls had stopped in May. It was now August, and I was sitting at my kitchen table on my 81st birthday, looking at my phone, waiting for it to ring. It didn't. At 9 p.m., I accepted what I'd known since morning. They'd forgotten. Or worse, they'd remembered and chosen not to call anyway. My family had stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped acknowledging I existed. And I didn't know why. I sat in the silence of my empty house, the house where I'd raised Jasmine, where we'd celebrated every birthday and holiday for 53 years, and I felt something crack inside me. Not my heart, something harder. My patience. For 3 months, I'd told myself they were busy, that life got overwhelming, that they'd call when things settled down. But 3 months of silence on my birthday wasn't busy, it was intentional. They thought I was broken by the silence, that I'd be sitting here desperate and grateful when they finally decided to reach out again. That was their first mistake. I didn't cry. I didn't call them begging to know what I'd done wrong. I did something else entirely. I opened my laptop and I started documenting. Every unanswered call I'd made over 3 months. Every text message I'd sent that got no response. Every occasion they'd missed. Mother's Day, my doctor's appointments I'd told them about, the anniversary of my husband's death. I documented it all with dates and screenshots, because something had shifted in that moment of sitting alone on my birthday. I stopped trying to understand why my family had stopped calling. And I started preparing for what I'd do when something changed. Now listen, before I tell you what I discovered when I finally figured out why 3 months of silence ended exactly when it did, before I show you what happens when people think your loneliness makes you desperate, I need you to do something. If you're watching this and you've ever been ghosted by your own family with no explanation, hit subscribe. Comment where you're watching from, because what happened when my family stopped calling and then something changed? You need to hear every single word. Turn on notifications. This story goes places they never saw coming. The silence had started so gradually, I almost didn't notice at first. In February, Jasmine called twice a week. We'd talk about her work, the kids' school activities, what was happening in my life. Normal mother-daughter conversations. In March, it dropped to once a week. Still normal. People get busy. In April, once every 2 weeks. I started initiating more calls, but she'd keep them short. "Mom, I'm swamped. Can I call you back later?" She never did. Then in May, the calls stopped completely. I'd call and it would go to voicemail. I'd text and get no response. At first I thought maybe her phone was broken, but her social media was active. I could see her posting photos, commenting on friends' updates, living her life. She just wasn't including me in it. I tried calling Kenneth, my son-in-law, voicemail. I tried texting my grandchildren, nothing. It was like I'd been erased. For 3 months, I'd been trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I said something offensive, overstepped some boundary, been too demanding? I searched every conversation, every interaction, looking for the moment I'd ruined everything. I found nothing. The last real conversation I'd had with Jasmine had been pleasant. She'd called to tell me about Zara making the honor roll. We'd laughed about Aiden's terrible school picture. Nothing controversial. Nothing that would explain 3 months of silence. That was the worst part, not knowing why. But on my birthday, sitting alone in my kitchen with my phone silent and my daughter's number absent from my recent calls, something changed in me. I stopped asking, what did I do wrong? And I started asking, what are they planning? Because people don't ghost their elderly mother for 3 months without a reason. And in my experience, when family suddenly cuts off contact with an elderly relative who's done nothing wrong, it's usually because they're planning something they don't want that relative to know about. I didn't know what they were planning, not yet. But I was going to find out. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called my attorney. His name was Russell Hammond, and he'd handled my estate planning for 15 years. My husband Arthur had died 10 years ago, leaving me financially secure. The house paid off, good investments, about $680,000 in total assets. Russell, I need to ask you a hypothetical question. If someone wanted to know the contents of an elderly person's will without asking directly, how would they do it? Are we talking about you, Vivian? Hypothetically, they couldn't access the will without your permission or a court order, but they could make guesses based on what they know about your assets. Why are you asking? Because my family stopped calling me 3 months ago with no explanation, and I'm wondering if they're planning something that requires me to be kept in the dark. Russell was quiet for a moment. That's concerning. Vivian, is your will current? I updated it 5 years ago. Everything goes to Jasmine. The house, the investments, all of it. And Jasmine knows this. I told her years ago. Standard mother-to-daughter inheritance. Russell, could someone contest a will on the grounds that the person who made it wasn't competent when they signed it? Yes, if they could prove the person was experiencing cognitive decline or was unduly influenced when they created or last updated their will. Vivian, why are you asking these specific questions? Because I'm trying to understand why my family would suddenly stop talking to me. And one possibility is that they're building a case to claim I'm incompetent so they can either control my assets now or challenge my will later. That's a serious accusation. It's a hypothesis, but Russell, I need to protect myself. Can you help me do that? Over the next week, Russell helped me do exactly what I'd done in the past when facing threats I couldn't quite see yet. I built a defensive wall of documentation. I got a comprehensive cognitive evaluation from Dr. Philip Wright, a neurologist who specialized in elderly patients. The results: cognitive function normal for my age, no signs of dementia or impairment, fully capable of managing my own affairs. I had my financial advisor provide documentation that I was managing my investments appropriately and making sound financial decisions. I updated my will to include a no-contest clause. If anyone challenged the will and lost, they'd be disinherited completely. And I had Russell write a letter to be held in his office, explaining that if anything happened to me, or if anyone claimed I was incompetent, these documents proved otherwise. I was preparing for a battle I couldn't yet see clearly, but I knew it was coming. Because my family didn't stop calling for no reason. 2 weeks after my birthday, I got my first clue about what they were planning. My next-door neighbor, Paula, came over with a concerned expression. Vivian, I need to tell you something. A woman came to my house yesterday asking questions about you. What kind of questions? About whether I'd noticed you struggling, whether your house looked neglected, whether you seemed confused or forgetful. She said she was doing a wellness check and wanted to get information from people who see you regularly. What did this woman look like? 30s, professional, had a clipboard. She said she was from some senior care agency. But Vivian, something felt off about it. She was asking very leading questions, like she wanted me to say something was wrong with you. What did you tell her? I told her you seem perfectly fine, that you maintain your house beautifully, that you're sharp as ever, that I've never noticed any problems. She seemed disappointed by that. Vivian, was that actually a legitimate wellness check? I don't know, but thank you for telling me. After Paula left, I sat with this new information. Someone was interviewing my neighbors, asking if I was declining, creating a record of concerns about my competence. That wasn't random, that was strategic. I called Russell. Someone's interviewing my neighbors, fishing for evidence that I'm declining or incompetent. Can you find out if there's an official investigation? Russell made calls. 2 days later, he called me back. There's no official APS investigation. No government agency is looking into your welfare. Vivian. Whoever interviewed your neighbor wasn't from any legitimate organization. So someone is impersonating officials to gather information about me. It appears that way. Do you know who would do that? I had a suspicion, but I needed proof. I called 3 other neighbors and asked if anyone had come to their houses asking about me. 2 said no, but Mrs. Chen, who lived across the street, said yes. A woman with a clipboard had come by last week asking questions about my cognitive state and living conditions. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her to leave. I said if she was really from a government agency, she could provide credentials and contact information. She left quickly after that. Vivian, I meant to tell you, but I didn't want to worry you." "Did you get a good look at her?" "Yes, 30s, brown hair, very polished. She had papers that looked official, but she wouldn't let me examine them closely." That description didn't match Jasmine. My daughter was 53, but it could have been someone she hired. A private investigator, maybe. Someone building a case about my supposed incompetence. I didn't argue with what I was learning. I remembered. I remembered every investigative technique I'd seen over the years. I'd worked as a paralegal for 30 years before retiring. I knew how people built legal cases. I knew what evidence looked like when you were trying to prove someone was incompetent. And this, interviewing neighbors, fishing for concerns, documenting supposed decline. This was exactly the groundwork you'd lay before pursuing guardianship or contesting a will. My family had stopped calling. Now someone was building a case that I was declining. The connection was becoming clear. But I still didn't understand why. What had changed? Why now? The answer came 3 weeks later, in the form of a phone call I almost didn't answer. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Vivian Porter." "Yes." "This is Amanda Reeves from Cascade Senior Living. I'm calling because we received an application for residency in your name. I wanted to schedule a tour and discuss our care levels and pricing." My blood went cold. I didn't submit any application. "Oh, well, we have an application here with your information, submitted by Jasmine Porter, who listed herself as your daughter and power of attorney. She indicated you're interested in our memory care facility." "I don't have memory problems, and my daughter doesn't have power of attorney over me." There was a pause. "I see. Mrs. Porter, I'm very sorry for the confusion. It sounds like there may have been a miscommunication. I'll update our records to show you're not interested in residency." "Wait, can you tell me what information was on that application?" "Well, it says here that you're 81, recently widowed." "I was widowed 10 years ago." "The application says recent. It also indicates you're experiencing significant memory loss and confusion, that you're struggling to manage daily activities, and that your family is concerned about your safety living alone. Mrs. Porter, if none of this is accurate, someone has submitted false information. Can you send me a copy of that application?" "I'll email it to you right now." The application arrived in my inbox 5 minutes later. I opened it, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. It was detailed, thorough. It painted a picture of an elderly woman in serious cognitive decline who needed immediate placement in memory care. Patient shows signs of advanced dementia, frequently forgets family members' names, unable to manage medications without supervision, leaves stove on, creating fire hazard, gets lost in familiar places, requires 24-hour care for safety. Every single thing was false, but someone had written it convincingly, with specific examples that sounded real. And at the bottom, a signature: Jasmine Porter, daughter and legal guardian. Jasmine wasn't my legal guardian. She had no authority to make decisions for me. But she was trying to create the appearance that she did. That was the moment I understood what had been happening. My family stopped calling 3 months ago. During those 3 months, someone had been interviewing my neighbors, building a case for my incompetence. Someone had submitted an application to a memory care facility claiming I had advanced dementia. They were creating a paper trail, a narrative, evidence that I was declining and needed to be placed in a facility. And once I was in that facility, once Jasmine had legal guardianship, she'd have control of my assets, my house, my investments, everything. The silence hadn't been about anger or a falling out. It had been strategic. They'd cut off contact so I wouldn't know what they were planning. So I'd be isolated, confused, easier to control when they made their move. My family had stopped calling, and what changed was that I finally understood why. I called Russell immediately. They're trying to have me committed to memory care. They submitted a false application claiming I have advanced dementia and that my daughter is my legal guardian. Russell, this is fraud. Send me everything. The application, the neighbor interview information, all of it. Vivian, we're filing for a declaratory judgment that you're competent, and we're pursuing charges for fraud and attempted exploitation. They're going to claim I'm too confused to understand what I'm doing. Which is why we have comprehensive medical evaluations showing you're not. Vivian, you've been 3 steps ahead of them this whole time. They don't know that yet. That evening, I received a text message, the first contact from my family in 3 months. It was from Jasmine. Mom, we need to talk. Can I come by tomorrow? They thought time was on their side. They thought 3 months of silence had left me desperate for contact, grateful for any attention, willing to accept whatever they said. They were about to discover they'd miscalculated. I responded, yes, 2 p.m. Then I called Russell. She's coming tomorrow. I need you here. I'll be there. The next day, Jasmine arrived at exactly 2 p.m. She looked surprised when Russell answered the door. Mom, why is your attorney here? Because we're discussing legal matters. Come in. We sat in my living room, Jasmine, Kenneth, Russell, and me. Jasmine had brought her husband but not the kids. This was business, not family. Mom, we need to talk about your living situation. Before we do that, I need to talk about the application you submitted to Cascade Senior Living, the one claiming I have advanced dementia and listing yourself as my legal guardian. Jasmine's face went white. How did you? They called me. Jasmine, you submitted false information to a care facility claiming I'm incompetent. That's fraud. Mom, we're worried about you. You're 81 and living alone. We think you need more support than you're willing to admit. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you're getting older, and we can see you're declining. I had a comprehensive cognitive evaluation 2 weeks ago. Dr. Philip Wright, a board-certified neurologist. He found 0 evidence of cognitive decline. I'm managing my life perfectly well. So where exactly are you seeing this decline? Kenneth spoke up. Mrs. Porter, with all due respect, people with dementia often don't realize they have it. That's part of the disease. Except I don't have dementia. I have medical documentation proving it. What I do have is a daughter who stopped calling me 3 months ago, hired someone to interview my neighbors fishing for evidence of decline, and submitted a fraudulent application claiming I need memory care. Jasmine, what's actually going on here? She exchanged a glance with Kenneth. Then she said something that confirmed everything I'd suspected. Mom, we've been discussing your estate planning, and we think it's time to make some changes. You're sitting on a lot of assets, this house, your investments. If something happens to you, if you need long-term care, those assets could be consumed by facility costs. We've been researching ways to protect your estate. Protect my estate, or protect your inheritance. It's the same thing. Mom, we're trying to help you preserve what you've built so there's something left for the family. By having me declared incompetent and placed in memory care, so you can take control of my assets before I actually need care and spend them on myself. That's not what we're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. You stopped calling so I wouldn't know what you were planning. You had someone interview my neighbors to build a case for incompetence. You submitted a fraudulent application to a care facility. Also, you could create a paper trail showing I need guardianship. Once you have guardianship, you control everything. My house, my money, my life. And you can make sure I don't spend your inheritance on my own care. Jasmine stood up, angry now. You're being paranoid. We're trying to help you and you're accusing us of elder abuse. Russell spoke for the first time. Mrs. Porter, Jasmine, your mother isn't being paranoid. She's being accurate. What you've done, submitting false information to a care facility, misrepresenting yourself as her legal guardian, hiring someone to impersonate officials while interviewing neighbors, those are crimes. Fraud, attempted exploitation, identity theft. Your mother could press charges. She wouldn't do that. I'm her daughter. I looked at Jasmine, my daughter, who I'd raised alone after her father died, who I'd supported through college and her wedding and the birth of her children, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. You stopped calling me for 3 months because you were planning to steal my life from me. You let me sit alone on my birthday because you were too busy building a case to have me committed. Jasmine, you're right that I'm your mother, but you're wrong about what I wouldn't do. Mom, please. Get out of my house, and don't contact me again unless it's through an attorney. They left, and I sat in my living room with Russell, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 months. Not relief, not victory. Just the cold satisfaction of understanding. My family had stopped calling, and what changed was that I figured out why and I prepared for it. But 3 days later, something else changed. And this time, it wasn't something I'd prepared for. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The email arrived at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. The subject line read, "Urgent your safety." I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but the sender was someone I recognized, Dr. Margaret Wallace, my primary care physician. I opened it. Vivian. I received a very concerning call today from someone claiming to be your daughter. She said you've been showing signs of serious cognitive decline, forgetting to take medications, getting lost while driving, exhibiting paranoid delusions about family members stealing from you. She asked me to provide documentation of your declining mental state to support a guardianship petition. She claimed you're a danger to yourself. I told her I couldn't discuss your medical information without your consent. But Vivian, I'm worried. Is everything okay? This call raised red flags for me. Please contact my office. Dr. Wallace. I stared at the email for a long moment. Then I called Russell, despite the late hour. They're contacting my doctor now, trying to get medical documentation to support guardianship. That's good, actually. It means they're desperate. They know you've caught them, so they're trying to establish an official record before you can stop them. Vivian, this shows their hand. They're going to file for guardianship soon. How soon? Days, maybe. We need to move first. I'm filing our petition tomorrow morning. Declaratory judgment that you're competent. We're going on a fence before they can establish their narrative. Russell filed the next morning. A petition requesting the court declare me competent and capable of managing my own affairs, with a request that the court prohibit any future guardianship petitions without clear medical evidence of actual decline. 2 days later, Jasmine filed her own petition. Emergency guardianship, claiming I was experiencing rapid cognitive decline and was at immediate risk of self-harm through poor judgment and inability to care for myself. We were going to court. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. During those 3 weeks, Jasmine escalated her campaign. I received calls from 3 different senior care facilities, all saying my daughter with power of attorney had submitted applications for me. I had to explain repeatedly that I had no power of attorney and the applications were fraudulent. My bank called to verify a request to add Jasmine as a joint account holder on my checking and savings accounts. I had to file a fraud alert. Someone called my insurance company claiming to be me, trying to get information about my coverage for long-term care facilities. The company flagged it as suspicious and contacted me directly. Every attempt was documented. Every fraud attempt became evidence for our case. But Jasmine was documenting too. I found out through Paula, my neighbor, who felt guilty for not telling me sooner. Vivian, that woman came back, the one asking questions about you. But this time she had a camera. She took pictures of your yard. There were some leaves on the lawn that hadn't been raked yet. She photographed your trash cans at the curb. She even tried to look in your windows before I chased her off. I'm so sorry I didn't call the police. It's okay, Paula. What did she photograph through the windows? I don't know if she got anything. I came out and yelled at her. But Vivian, she was clearly trying to document something. They were building a visual case. Unmowed lawn means neglect. Trash cans at the curb means confusion about pickup day. Any glimpse of normal household clutter through a window could be framed as dangerous living conditions. I spent that weekend making sure my house was immaculate, lawn perfectly maintained, windows spotless, every room organized. I took my own photographs documenting the condition of my home. Because I knew what was coming. At the hearing, they'd present photos showing evidence of my decline. I needed photos proving the opposite. 1 week before the hearing, I got a visitor I didn't expect. It was Aiden, my grandson, 17 years old, nearly an adult. I hadn't seen him in over 3 months. He stood on my porch, looking uncomfortable and angry. "Grandma, can I come in?" "Of course." We sat in my living room. Aiden didn't speak immediately. Finally, he said, "Mom told us you're sick, that you have dementia and you're getting dangerous. She said we couldn't visit you because you might not recognize us and it would upset you." "Aiden, I don't have dementia. I had a medical evaluation. My cognitive function is completely normal." "I know, I heard Mom on the phone with her lawyer. Grandma, she's lying. About you being sick, about needing to protect you. She's trying to get control of your money." "What did you hear exactly?" "I heard her tell Dad that once she has guardianship, she can sell your house and move you into the cheapest care facility possible. She said the difference between what your house is worth and what basic care costs would be significant." "Grandma, she's talking about your house like it's already hers." I wasn't surprised, but hearing it from my grandson made it real in a different way. "How do you feel about what your mother's doing?" "I think it's disgusting. Grandma, you raised her. You took care of her after Grandpa died. And now she's doing this? I told her she was wrong. We had a huge fight. That's why I'm here. She doesn't know I came." "Aiden, there's going to be a court hearing next week. Your mother is trying to have me declared incompetent. I'm fighting it. It might get ugly." "I know. Grandma, can I testify? Against Mom. I want to tell the judge what I heard." I thought about that carefully. "Aiden, if you testify against your mother, it could destroy your relationship with her." "She destroyed our relationship when she lied to me about you being sick and kept me from seeing you for 3 months. Grandma, I'm almost 18. I can make my own decisions. I want to testify." "Then talk to my attorney. His number is on this card. Aiden, thank you for coming." After he left, I sat with what he'd told me. Jasmine was planning to sell my house and put me in the cheapest facility possible. Pocket the difference. She wasn't trying to protect my assets. She was trying to liquidate them. Russell added Aiden to our witness list. Jasmine's attorney objected, calling it turning a minor against his own mother. But Aiden was 17, nearly 18, and the judge allowed it. The hearing took place on a Tuesday morning. Judge Patricia Odoms presiding. Present, Jasmine and Kenneth with their attorney Marcus Webb, me with Russell Hammond, and Aiden sitting in the gallery looking nervous but determined. Judge Odoms reviewed both petitions. "We have competing petitions. Mrs. Jasmine Morrison seeking emergency guardianship over her mother, Vivian Porter, due to alleged cognitive decline, and Mrs. Porter seeking a declaration of competence. Mrs. Morrison filed first, so we'll hear her case." Marcus Webb stood. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of an elderly woman experiencing dementia who refuses to acknowledge her decline. Mrs. Porter is 81 years old. Her family has observed significant deterioration in her mental state over recent months. She's become paranoid. Accusing family members of trying to steal from her. She's unable to maintain her home properly. She forgets basic things like when trash pickup occurs. She needs guardianship for her own protection." He called Jasmine as his first witness. "Mrs. Morrison, describe your mother's recent behavior." "She's changed dramatically over the past 6 months. She used to be sharp, organized. Now she forgets conversations we've had. She accuses us of things that never happened. She's paranoid. She thinks we're trying to steal from her, which is absurd. We're just trying to help. She's also neglecting her home. The lawn is overgrown, trash piles up. She's clearly struggling but won't admit it. Can you give specific examples of her memory problems? She'll call me and ask the same questions multiple times. She forgets we've already discussed things. Last month, she accused me of not calling her when I'd called her 3 times that week. She can't keep track of time or conversations. It's classic dementia behavior. What happened when you tried to help? She became hostile. We suggested she might benefit from assisted living where she'd have support. She accused us of trying to steal her house. We tried to help her with finances, making sure bills were paid, accounts organized, and she called the police claiming fraud. She's completely irrational. Your Honor, my mother needs help whether she wants to admit it or not. Russell's cross-examination was precise. Mrs. Morrison, you testified that you called your mother 3 times in the month she claimed you didn't call. Do you have phone records proving those calls? Jasmine hesitated. I don't have them with me. Because those calls didn't happen, did they? In fact, you didn't call your mother at all for 3 months, from May through July. Isn't that correct? We were giving her space because she was so hostile. Yes or no? Did you call your mother between May 1st and July 31st? No, but... And during those 3 months when you weren't calling, were you hearing people to interview your mother's neighbors about her supposed decline? We were trying to understand the situation. Were you having people photograph her house and look in her windows? We needed to document her living conditions. Without her knowledge or consent, Mrs. Morrison, you also submitted an application to Cascade Senior Living claiming your mother has advanced dementia and listing yourself as her legal guardian. Is that correct? We were exploring options. You submitted false information. The application claimed your mother has severe memory loss, can't manage daily activities, and requires 24-hour care. None of that is true, is it? She needs care, even if she doesn't realize it. Answer the question. Does your mother actually have severe memory loss? She's declining. That's not what I asked. Judge, please instruct the witness to answer yes or no. Judge Odoms looked at Jasmine. Answer the question, Mrs. Morrison. She's showing signs of early decline, which a neurologist evaluated and found no evidence of. Mrs. Morrison, one more question. Did you tell your son that once you obtained guardianship, you plan to sell your mother's house and place her in the cheapest care facility possible, keeping the financial difference for yourself? Jasmine's face went red. That's taken out of context. Did you say those words, yes or no? I was discussing financial options. Your Honor, I have a witness who will testify to exactly what Mrs. Morrison said, but I'd like to give her the opportunity to be truthful now. Jasmine looked trapped. I may have discussed the financial aspects of various care options, including keeping the significant difference between home sale proceeds and care costs for yourself. Thank you. No further questions. Next, Marcus Webb called Kenneth. Mr. Morrison, what have you observed about your mother-in-law's condition? She's definitely declining. Confused, paranoid. Last time I saw her, she accused us of trying to steal from her. That's delusional behavior. She needs professional care. When was the last time you saw her? About 4 months ago. So you haven't actually observed her recently. We've been staying away because of her hostility, but Jasmine keeps me informed. Russell's cross-examination was brief. Mr. Morrison, everything you know about Mrs. Porter's supposed decline comes from your wife, correct? You have no first-hand observations. I trust my wife. That's not what I asked. All your testimony is based on what your wife told you, not what you've personally witnessed. Correct. Yes. Thank you. No further questions. Then it was our turn. Russell called me first. Mrs. Porter, tell the court about the 3 months when your daughter stopped calling. I described the gradual silence, the unanswered calls and texts, my birthday spent alone, the confusion about what I'd done wrong. When did you discover what was actually happening? When Cascade Senior Living called me about an application I never submitted, that's when I realized the silence wasn't about anger. It was strategic. They stopped calling so I wouldn't know they were building a case for incompetence behind my back. How did you respond? I got a comprehensive neurological evaluation proving I'm cognitively normal. I documented every fraud attempt, the false applications, the bank account access attempts, the impersonation of officials interviewing my neighbors. I prepared to defend myself legally rather than emotionally. Why? Because I spent 30 years as a paralegal. I know how legal cases are built. I recognized what they were doing, creating a paper trail of concerns to support guardianship. I needed my own paper trail proving the opposite. Marcus Webb cross-examined aggressively. Mrs. Porter, isn't it true that people with dementia often can't recognize their own decline? Yes, which is why I got an independent medical evaluation from a specialist. If I had dementia, Dr. Wright would have found it. Isn't it possible you're in denial about your limitations? Is it possible I'm accurately assessing my own functioning, and my daughter is lying about my condition to gain control of my assets? Because I have documentation supporting my version, and she has none supporting hers. You accuse your own daughter of trying to steal from you. Doesn't that seem paranoid? She submitted fraudulent applications claiming she's my legal guardian. She attempted to add herself to my bank accounts without permission. She hired people to impersonate officials. Those aren't paranoid accusations. Those are documented facts. Mr. Webb, paranoia is believing people are out to get you when they're not. I'm believing people are out to get me because they demonstrably are. Russell called Dr. Wright next. Dr. Wright, you conducted a comprehensive neurological evaluation of Mrs. Porter. What did you find? Cognitive function within normal range for her age. Excellent memory. Appropriate judgment. No signs of dementia, confusion, or impairment. Mrs. Porter is fully capable of managing her own affairs. Could you have missed early-stage dementia? No, the evaluation was specifically designed to detect even subtle cognitive changes. I found none. Mrs. Porter's brain is functioning well. Marcus Webb tried to undermine the evaluation. Dr. Wright, is it possible for someone to perform well on tests while still experiencing real-world functioning problems? It's possible but unlikely with this type of comprehensive evaluation. And I'd expect to see some evidence of impairment on testing if real-world functioning was significantly compromised. I saw no evidence of that. Then Russell called Aiden. Mr. Morrison, Aiden, what is your relationship to the parties in this case? Jasmine Morrison is my mother. Vivian Porter is my grandmother. Tell the court what you overheard your mother saying. Aiden looked at his mother, then at me. Then he spoke clearly. I heard Mom on the phone with someone, I think her attorney. She said once she got guardianship of Grandma, she'd sell Grandma's house and put her in the cheapest care facility she could find. She said the difference between what the house would sell for and what basic care costs would be significant. She was talking about keeping that money, about how Grandma's assets could fund their retirement and my college. Jasmine stood up. That's not Aiden, you misunderstood. Judge Odoms banged her gavel. Mrs. Morrison, sit down. What else did you hear? Russell asked Aiden. Mom told Dad that they needed to move fast before Grandma figured out what was happening. She said the 3 months of silence had been perfect because it kept Grandma confused and isolated. She said confused old people are easier to control than ones who have time to organize a defense. How did that make you feel? Sick. My grandmother raised my mother. She's always been there for us. And Mom was talking about her like she was just an asset to liquidate. I told Mom she was wrong. We had a huge fight. She said I was too young to understand adult financial planning. But I understand elder abuse when I see it. Marcus Webb cross-examined. Aiden, you're testifying against your own mother. Isn't it possible you're angry at her about something else and this is revenge? I'm angry at her for lying to me, for keeping me from seeing my grandmother for 3 months, for trying to steal Grandma's house. But this isn't revenge. It's telling the truth. You're 17. Do you really think you understand the complexities of estate planning and elder care? I understand the difference between helping someone and exploiting them. Mom isn't trying to help Grandma. She's trying to take Grandma's money. That's not complicated. The hearing lasted 4 hours. At the end, Judge Odom said she'd issue a written ruling within 1 week. Those were the longest 7 days of my life. When the ruling came, Russell called me immediately. We won. Complete victory. Judge Odom's denied Jasmine's guardianship petition and granted your petition for declaratory judgment. Vivian, you're officially declared competent by court order. Judge Odom's written decision was 12 pages. The conclusion. This court finds Mrs. Vivian Porter to be fully competent and capable of managing her own affairs. The petitioner's claims of cognitive decline are not supported by medical evidence and appear to be motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern. More troubling is the pattern of behavior exhibited by petitioner Morrison, ceasing contact with her mother for 3 months while secretly building a case for incompetence, submitting fraudulent applications to care facilities, attempting unauthorized access to financial accounts, and hearing individuals to impersonate officials. This is not concern. This is exploitation. The petition for guardianship is denied. The petition for declaratory judgment is granted. Mrs. Porter is declared competent and capable. Furthermore, petitioner Morrison is prohibited from filing any future guardianship petitions without clear, independent medical evidence of actual decline. Any violation of this order will result in sanctions. This court commends Mrs. Porter for her thorough preparation and appropriate self-advocacy. My family had stopped calling. Then something changed. I figured out why and I fought back. But the victory felt hollow, because I'd won in court, but I'd lost my daughter. Or so I thought. 2 weeks after the ruling, something else changed. Something I didn't expect. Something that showed me the story wasn't over yet. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Mrs. Porter, this is Detective Sarah Mendez with the Fraud Division. I need to speak with you about your daughter." My chest tightened. What about her? "We've been investigating Jasmine Morrison based on the court documents from your guardianship hearing. What she did, submitting fraudulent applications, impersonating officials, attempting unauthorized financial access, those are crimes. I'd like to come to your house and take a formal statement. Are you willing to cooperate with a criminal investigation?" I sat down slowly. Criminal investigation against my own daughter. "Yes, I'll cooperate." Detective Mendez came to my house that afternoon. She was thorough and professional, taking detailed notes about everything: the 3 months of silence, the fraudulent applications, the neighbor interviews, the bank access attempts. "Mrs. Porter, your daughter committed multiple felonies: identity theft, fraud, impersonation of officials. The court case gave us everything we need for prosecution. But I need to ask, do you want to press charges?" Did I want my own daughter arrested? What happens if I do? We file criminal charges. She'll be arrested, arraigned, and likely offered a plea deal. If she doesn't take it, we go to trial. Given the evidence, conviction is almost certain. She could face jail time. And if I don't press charges? Then we close the investigation. She faces no criminal consequences beyond the civil court ruling. "Mrs. Porter, I know this is your daughter, but what she did was serious. And based on the pattern, if there are no consequences, she'll likely try again." I thought about that. About Jasmine trying to have me declared incompetent. About the 3 months of silence while she plotted. About finding out she'd planned to sell my house and warehouse me in the cheapest facility possible. I need time to think about it. Take a week. But Mrs. Porter, I want you to know, what your daughter did to you, she could do to someone else's elderly parent. Sometimes pressing charges isn't just about personal justice. It's about preventing future victims. After Detective Mendez left, I sat with the hardest decision I'd faced yet. Defending myself in court was one thing. Having my daughter arrested was another. But that evening, something happened that made the decision for me. I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "You need to know this." Inside was a forwarded email chain between Jasmine and someone named Trevor Hastings, who appeared to be a financial advisor. The emails were dated from April, right when Jasmine had started pulling away from me. From Jasmine, "My mother is 81, owns her home outright, has about $680K in assets. What's the most efficient way to access those assets while she's still alive? I'm concerned that if she lives another 10-15 years and ends up in expensive care, there won't be much inheritance left." Trevor's response, "The most efficient approach is guardianship. Once you have legal control, you can sell the house, move her to basic Medicaid qualifying care, and manage the assets as you see fit. The key is establishing incompetence before she resists." Jasmine, "How do we establish incompetence?" Trevor, "Document everything that could be framed as decline. Hire someone to interview neighbors. If they express any concerns, even minor ones, document it. Submit applications to care facilities noting memory issues, confusion, inability to manage daily living. Create a paper trail. Then file for emergency guardianship citing safety concerns. Most elderly people don't fight back effectively, especially if you've isolated them first." Jasmine, "Isolated them how?" Trevor, "Stop regular contact. It serves two purposes. One, they become disoriented by the sudden change, which can actually create confusion you can then document. Two, they don't know what you're planning, so they can't prepare a defense. By the time they realize what's happening, you already have the legal groundwork in place." Jasmine, "That makes sense. I'll start pulling back on calls now. Give it a few months to create confusion, then make our move." I read the email chain 3 times. Each time I felt colder. This hadn't been just about inheritance. It had been a calculated plan to exploit my age, to manufacture evidence of decline, to isolate me deliberately to make me vulnerable. The 3 months of silence hadn't been strategy. It had been psychological warfare. Designed to confuse me, disorient me, make me easier to control. At the bottom of the forwarded email was a note. "Mrs. Porter, I'm Trevor Hastings' assistant. I quit last week after discovering he's been advising multiple clients on how to exploit their elderly parents. I can't legally prove all of it, but I wanted you to know what your daughter was following. She paid him $5,000 for this advice. I'm sorry." I forwarded the email to Detective Mendez. She called me back within an hour. "Mrs. Porter, this is conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. This Trevor Hastings has been running an exploitation scheme, coaching adult children on how to steal from their parents. We're opening a much bigger investigation, but for your specific case, are you ready to press charges now?" "Yes." "I'll start the paperwork." Jasmine was arrested 3 days later. She was charged with fraud, identity theft, attempted financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Kenneth wasn't charged. There wasn't enough evidence he'd been actively involved, rather than just going along with Jasmine's plan. The arrest made local news. Woman arrested for attempting to defraud elderly mother. My phone started ringing. Family members I hadn't heard from in years, calling to ask what was happening. Some were supportive. Others accused me of destroying my own daughter. Jasmine's sister, my younger daughter Corrine, who lived across the country, called me crying. "Mom, how could you have Jasmine arrested? She's your daughter." "She tried to have me declared incompetent and steal my house, Corrine. Should I have just let her?" "She was trying to help you. She was worried about you." "Did you know she paid a financial advisor $5,000 for advice on how to exploit elderly parents? That she deliberately stopped calling me for 3 months to create confusion she could use as evidence of decline. Corrine, this wasn't help. This was a calculated scheme." "I don't believe that. Jasmine wouldn't." "I have the emails. The advisor laid out the whole plan. Isolate the parent, document anything that can be framed as decline, file for guardianship before they can defend themselves. Jasmine followed it step by step. Corrine was quiet. Then she said, "Can I see those emails?" I sent them to her. She called me back 2 hours later. Her voice was different, shaken. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought Jasmine was genuinely worried about you. I didn't realize she was. Jesus, this is sociopathic." "Corrine, did Jasmine ever talk to you about my finances?" "She asked me once if I knew how much your house was worth, if I knew what your assets were. I told her it wasn't my business. She got annoyed and said family should discuss these things openly. Mom, was she planning to do this to me too?" "I don't know, but the advisor's emails mention multiple clients, people who pay him to learn how to exploit their elderly parents. Jasmine was one of many." "That's horrifying." "Yes, Corrine, I need to ask you something. Will you testify at her trial about the conversations she had with you about my finances?" "I'll testify. Mom, I'm so sorry you went through this alone. If I'd known." "You're across the country. You couldn't have known. But I need you to understand something. I'm not pressing charges to punish Jasmine. I'm pressing charges because what she did was criminal, and if she faces no consequences, she'll do it to someone else. Maybe to you someday." "I understand. I'll testify." Jasmine's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Probation, community service, restitution, no jail time. Detective Mendez called me. "The prosecutor is considering the plea offer, but it's your call. How do you feel about Jasmine getting probation instead of jail?" I thought about it carefully. What would the terms be? 5 years probation, 500 hours community service, specifically working with elder abuse prevention, $25,000 restitution to you for legal fees and emotional distress, permanent restraining order, and a public admission of guilt she'd have to allocate in court, stating exactly what she did and why it was wrong. No jail time at all. Not unless she violates probation. Mrs. Porter, I know you might want stronger consequences, but this plea deal includes something important, the public allocution. Jasmine would have to stand in court and admit, on record, that she deliberately tried to exploit you. That creates a permanent record that could help other elderly people whose children try similar schemes. Will she agree to those terms? Her attorney thinks she will. The alternative is going to trial, and with the evidence we have, she'd likely be convicted and face actual jail time. This way she avoids incarceration but still faces serious consequences. I'll accept the plea deal, but only if the allocution is detailed. I want her to state exactly what she did, how she planned it, and why it was wrong. No vague admissions. I'll make sure the prosecutor requires that. The plea hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The courtroom was small but full. Detective Mendez, Russell Hammond, Corrine, who'd flown in to support me, Aiden sitting in the back row, and Kenneth sitting alone looking devastated. Jasmine stood before the judge. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Judge Raymond Foster, a different judge from the civil case, reviewed the plea agreement. "Mrs. Morrison, you're pleading guilty to fraud, identity theft, and attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Do you understand the charges?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Before I accept this plea, you must allocute. That means you must state, in your own words, what you did and why it was criminal. Mrs. Morrison, tell the court what happened." Jasmine looked at her attorney, who nodded. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I conspired with a financial advisor to exploit my mother. I paid him $5,000 to teach me how to have her declared incompetent so I could gain control of her assets. He advised me to stop contacting her for several months to create confusion I could use as evidence of decline. I followed his advice. I stopped calling my mother for 3 months, ignored her birthday, and let her believe I was angry with her when really I was building a case against her competence. Continue. I hired someone to interview my mother's neighbors, pretending to be from a government agency, to gather any negative information about her functioning. I submitted false applications to care facilities claiming she had advanced dementia and listing myself as her legal guardian when I had no such authority. I attempted to add myself to her bank accounts without permission. I photographed her house looking for anything that could be framed as evidence of neglect. Why did you do these things? Jasmine was crying now. Because I wanted her money. I didn't want to wait until she died to inherit. I wanted to sell her house while she was alive and control the proceeds. The financial advisor told me that if my mother lived another 10 or 15 years in expensive care, there wouldn't be much inheritance left. He said the most efficient way to preserve the estate was to take control early, move her to cheap care, and manage the assets myself. Did you consider how this would affect your mother? I told myself I was helping her, that she needed care whether she admitted it or not, but that was a lie. I wasn't thinking about her needs. I was thinking about money, about what I felt entitled to because I was her daughter. Your Honor, what I did was elder abuse. I tried to steal my mother's autonomy, her home, and her assets. I used her age against her. I isolated her deliberately to make her vulnerable. It was calculated and it was cruel, and I'm deeply ashamed. Judge Foster looked at her for a long moment. Mrs. Morrison, I'm accepting your guilty plea, but I want you to understand something. Elder abuse is one of the most insidious crimes we see. Children exploit their parents' trust and vulnerability. They steal from the very people who raised them. You did exactly that. The only reason you're not going to jail is because your mother has chosen to show you more mercy than you showed her. He sentenced her according to the plea deal. 5 years probation, 500 hours community service, $25,000 restitution, permanent restraining order. You are prohibited from contacting your mother unless she initiates contact. You are prohibited from discussing her finances or assets with anyone. You are prohibited from submitting any applications, making any inquiries, or taking any action related to her care or living situation. Any violation results in immediate revocation of probation and jail time. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. After the hearing, Kenneth approached me in the hallway. He looked broken. Mrs. Porter, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know the full extent of what Jasmine was planning. I thought she was genuinely worried about you. When I found out about the advisor, about the deliberate isolation strategy, I filed for divorce. I can't be married to someone who would do that to their own mother. How are the kids? Devastated, confused. Aiden is angry at both of us. Zara won't speak to her mother at all. Mrs. Porter, I'm sorry for everything. Kenneth, take care of those kids. They're going to need stability. I will. And Mrs. Porter, if you ever want to see Aiden or Zara, just call me. They're your grandchildren. They shouldn't lose you because of what their mother did. That evening, I sat in my house. The house Jasmine had tried to sell out from under me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not triumph, not vindication. Just exhausted relief. My family had stopped calling. Then something changed. I discovered why, fought back, and won. But the victory had cost me my relationship with my daughter, possibly forever. Or so I thought. 6 months later, I received a letter, handwritten, from Jasmine. Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability without expecting anything in return. What I did to you was unforgivable. I didn't just try to steal your money. I tried to steal your autonomy, your dignity, your right to make your own choices. I used your age as a weapon against you. I exploited the trust between mother and daughter. I've been in therapy for 6 months, trying to understand how I became someone who could do that to her own mother. The easy answer is greed, but it's deeper than that. I felt entitled. I looked at your assets and I saw my inheritance, my security, my future. I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a resource. The financial advisor made it seem logical, even compassionate. You're preserving her estate. You're protecting her from expensive care that will drain everything. He framed exploitation as financial planning, and I wanted to believe it because it gave me permission to do what I wanted to do anyway, take control of your money. The 3 months of silence were calculated psychological abuse. I knew it would confuse you, hurt you. The advisor said confused elderly people are easier to control, so I deliberately hurt you to make you vulnerable. Mom, I don't know how to live with what I did. I wake up every day knowing I tried to destroy my own mother for money. That I made you sit alone on your birthday while I planned how to steal your house. You raised me alone after Dad died. You worked 2 jobs to give me stability. You paid for my college. You've been there for every important moment of my life. And I repaid you by trying to have you declared incompetent and locked in a facility. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know I understand what I did. I know it was evil, and I'm sorry. Jasmine. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and I sat with it for a week. Finally, I wrote back, 1 page to her 4. Jasmine, I received your letter. Thank you for the apology. But an apology doesn't undo what you did. You didn't just make a mistake. You executed a months-long plan to exploit me. You paid someone to teach you how to do it. You followed his advice step by step. That's not impulse. That's not poor judgment. That's deliberate choice. I'm glad you're in therapy. I hope you continue working on understanding how you became someone capable of this. But Jasmine, understanding why you did it doesn't change that you did it. You're right that you used my age as a weapon. You're right that you stopped seeing me as a person. Those things are true. Here's what else is true. I defended myself. I documented your scheme. I fought back in court and I won. And when given the choice, I showed you mercy by accepting a plea deal that kept you out of jail. I did that not because you deserved it, but because I'm still your mother, even after everything. But being your mother doesn't mean having a relationship with you. That's broken, maybe permanently. If you genuinely change, if you spend years proving through actions, not just words, that you understand what you did and why it was wrong, maybe someday we can talk. But that's years away, not months, years. Until then, I'm living my life. I'm healthy, I'm independent, I'm managing my own affairs just fine. And Jasmine, I'm doing it without you. That's the consequence of what you chose. Live with it. Mom. I mailed the letter, and I meant every word. My family had stopped calling. Then something changed. I discovered the plot, fought back, won in court, and watched my daughter face criminal consequences. The story should have ended there. But 3 months after I sent that letter, something else changed. Something that proved the story was far from over. The call came from Aiden. He was 18 now, technically an adult, living with his father after Kenneth's divorce from Jasmine was finalized. Grandma, we need to talk. Can I come over? Of course. He arrived an hour later, looking serious and carrying a folder. Grandma, I found something. In Mom's old files. She kept everything in boxes in Dad's garage. He hasn't gone through them yet. I was looking for some of my childhood photos and I found this. He handed me the folder. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Financial records, property assessments, and a legal document dated from 2 years ago, 2 full years before the guardianship attempt. It was a consultation agreement with Trevor Hastings, the financial advisor who'd coached Jasmine on how to exploit me. Dated January 2 years ago, Aiden said quietly. Grandma, she wasn't planning this for months. She was planning it for years. I read through the documents, notes from multiple consultations, a detailed timeline for establishing incompetence, a financial projection showing exactly how much money Jasmine would gain by taking control of my assets at age 79 versus waiting until I died naturally. The projection showed that if I lived to 90 and spent money on care, Jasmine would inherit approximately $180,000. But if she gained control at 79 and managed the assets herself, she could preserve closer to $650,000. The difference, $470,000. That was the price tag Jasmine had put on stealing 11 years of my autonomy. There's more, Aiden said. Keep reading. I found emails between Jasmine and Trevor discussing not just me, but other elderly people in similar situations. Jasmine had apparently been involved in Trevor's operation, referring other clients to him, earning referral fees for each elderly person whose children she helped exploit. She'd made $15,000 in referral fees over 2 years. $15,000 earned by helping other people steal from their parents. Grandma, I think we need to show this to Detective Mendez. This is bigger than just what Mom did to you. I called Detective Mendez immediately. She came to my house that evening and reviewed everything. Mrs. Porter, this changes the entire scope of the investigation. Jasmine wasn't just a victim of Trevor Hastings' bad advice. She was a co-conspirator. She was actively recruiting other people into his exploitation scheme. This is organized crime targeting elderly people. What does this mean for her probation? It means she violated the terms of her plea deal. She wasn't supposed to have any ongoing involvement in financial exploitation schemes. But these referrals went right up until her arrest. Mrs. Porter, she's going to jail. Wait. The plea deal is void. We're reopening the criminal case with these new charges added. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse on a scale involving multiple victims. She's looking at serious prison time now. I sat with that information. Part of me felt vindicated. Jasmine had been even worse than I'd known. But part of me felt sick. My daughter was going to prison. Detective Mendez, before you move forward, can I see the full list of people Jasmine referred to Trevor? The other victims. She hesitated. I can't share victim information. But Mrs. Porter, there are 7 other elderly people whose children Jasmine connected with Trevor Hastings. 7 other families where adult children are trying to exploit their parents using Trevor's playbook. Are those investigations ongoing? Some are, some haven't been reported yet. Why? Because I want to contact them. The elderly parents, I mean. I want them to know what their children are planning before it's too late. I had time to prepare because I caught on early. They might not be as lucky. Detective Mendez looked at me thoughtfully. I can't officially give you their information, but if you happen to attend a support group for elderly people dealing with family exploitation, you might meet some people with similar experiences. There's one that meets at the community center Thursday evenings. I understood. She was telling me where to find the other victims without officially giving me their names. I attended the support group that Thursday. It was small, about 15 people, all elderly, all dealing with family members who were either exploiting them or attempting to. During the sharing portion, a woman named Barbara spoke. She was 83, and her story was eerily familiar. My son stopped calling 6 months ago. No explanation. Then last month I found out he'd submitted an application to a memory care facility in my name, claiming I have severe dementia. I don't. I got a medical evaluation proving I'm fine, but I don't understand why he'd do this. I spoke up. Barbara, did your son consult with anyone named Trevor Hastings? She looked startled. How did you know? Yes, I found a receipt for $5,000 paid to something called Hastings Financial Consulting. He's not a financial consultant. He's a criminal who teaches adult children how to exploit their elderly parents. My daughter used his services. She paid him $5,000, and he gave her a step-by-step plan to have me declared incompetent so she could steal my assets. Your son is probably following the same playbook. Barbara's face went pale. What should I do? Document everything. Get medical evaluations proving you're competent, hire an attorney, and report it to the police. Trevor Hastings is under investigation. Your son's involvement could help build the case against him. 3 other people in that support group had similar stories. Children who'd stopped calling, mysterious applications to care facilities, large unexplained payments to financial consultants. They were all targets of the same exploitation scheme. Over the next 2 weeks, I helped all of them. I connected them with Detective Mendez. I shared my own documentation showing what the exploitation pattern looked like. I helped them find attorneys and get medical evaluations. And slowly, a larger case emerged. Trevor Hastings had been running this operation for at least 5 years. Dozens of elderly people had been targeted. Some had been successfully exploited, declared incompetent, placed in facilities, their assets liquidated. Others, like me, had fought back. Jasmine had been involved for 2 years, referring 7 families to Trevor in exchange for $15,000 in fees. The case expanded. Trevor was arrested on multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. Jasmine's probation was revoked, and she was charged with being an active participant in an elder abuse ring. The trial was scheduled for 3 months later. Kenneth called me one evening, his voice shaking. "Mrs. Porter, Jasmine's attorney says she could get 15 years if convicted on all counts. 15 years. She's begging me to ask you to speak on her behalf at sentencing, to ask for leniency." Why would I do that? Because she's the mother of your grandchildren. Because despite everything, she's still your daughter. Mrs. Porter, she's destroyed. She knows she was wrong. She's terrified. She should be terrified. Kenneth, she didn't just try to exploit me. She helped Trevor Hastings set up an entire operation to exploit dozens of elderly people. Some of those people lost everything. Their homes, their savings, their autonomy. Because Jasmine taught their children how to steal from them in exchange for referral fees. I know, but Mrs. Porter. No, I showed her mercy once by accepting a plea deal. She violated that deal by continuing to participate in exploitation schemes. I'm not speaking on her behalf. She's going to face the consequences of what she did. The kids are devastated. The kids should be devastated. Their mother is a criminal. Kenneth, I love Aiden and Zara. I'll always be their grandmother. But I'm not protecting Jasmine from the results of her own choices. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails, financial records, testimony from 7 elderly victims whose children had followed Trevor's playbook, testimony from me about Jasmine's specific actions. Jasmine tried to testify in her own defense. She claimed she hadn't understood that what Trevor was teaching was illegal, that she'd thought it was legitimate financial planning, that she'd only referred people to him because she genuinely thought he was helping families protect assets. But the prosecutor had the emails, including ones where Jasmine explicitly discussed finding elderly parents with significant assets and adult children willing to take control before expensive care eats up the inheritance. She'd known exactly what she was doing. The jury convicted on all counts: conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, operating a criminal enterprise. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Judge Foster reviewed the presentencing report. Then he looked at Jasmine. "Mrs. Morrison, you were given a second chance. A plea deal that kept you out of prison despite serious crimes against your own mother. And while on probation, you continued to participate in criminal activity targeting vulnerable elderly people. You actively recruited other families into an exploitation scheme. You profited from teaching adult children how to steal from their parents. Your Honor, I made terrible mistakes." These weren't mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. What you did was calculated and sustained. You spent 2 years actively working to exploit elderly people, starting with your own mother, for financial gain. He sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison. Jasmine collapsed. Kenneth, sitting in the gallery, put his head in his hands. Aiden and Zara, now 19 and 16, held each other and cried. I felt nothing, just a strange emptiness where the anger used to be. After the sentencing, Aiden approached me in the hallway. "Grandma, I know Mom deserves this. I know she did terrible things, but 12 years. She'll be 70 when she gets out. That's basically her whole life. She tried to steal my whole life, Aiden. And not just mine, dozens of other elderly people's lives. Some of those people lost everything because of what your mother taught their children to do. 12 years is what she earned. I know, I don't know how to feel. Feel sad, feel angry, feel confused. All of that is appropriate. But Aiden, don't feel responsible. You didn't do this. Your mother did. Will you stay in my life, even though Mom is in prison? Of course. You and Zara are my grandchildren, always. What your mother did doesn't change that. Over the following months, I continued attending the support group. I became something of an advocate for elderly people facing exploitation by family members. I shared my story. I helped people document their cases. I connected them with resources. I testified before the state legislature about the need for stronger elder abuse protections. I worked with Detective Mendez to identify warning signs that someone might be targeting an elderly family member. And I lived my life, independently, competently, on my own terms. I was 83 now, still healthy, still managing my own affairs, still living in the house Jasmine had tried to sell. Kenneth brought Aiden and Zara to visit once a month. We had dinners. We talked about their lives, their futures, their healing. Corrine, my younger daughter, visited twice a year. We'd rebuilt a relationship that had been neglected for too long. I changed my will. The house and half my assets would go to Aiden and Zara directly when I died, held in trust until they were 30. The other half would go to an elder abuse prevention foundation I'd helped establish. Nothing would go to Jasmine. Even if she outlived me, even if she someday got out of prison, she would inherit nothing. That was the consequence of trying to steal from me while I was alive. 2 years after Jasmine's sentencing, I received a letter from her. Prison mail, carefully screened. Mom, I've been in prison for 2 years. I have 10 more to go. Every day I think about what I did, not just to you, but to all those other families. The elderly people who lost their homes because I taught their children how to steal from them. I can't undo it. I can't give back the years I stole from you, the 3 months of silence, the stress of the court battles, the trauma of being betrayed by your own daughter. I'm in a program here for people who have committed financial crimes. We're studying the psychology of greed and entitlement. I'm learning about the cognitive distortions that let people like me justify exploitation. I told myself I deserved your money because I was your daughter. I told myself I was protecting assets, not stealing them. I told myself the elderly people Trevor's clients were targeting didn't really need all that money anyway. All lies, all ways of avoiding the truth. I wanted money I hadn't earned, and I was willing to destroy people to get it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect anything. I just want you to know you were right to fight back. You were right to press charges. You were right to refuse to speak at my sentencing. Every consequence I'm facing, I earned. I'm sorry for all of it. Jasmine. I read the letter. Then I put it in a folder with all the other documents from this ordeal. The court rulings, the plea agreements, the trial transcripts, the sentencing order. Evidence of what happened when my family stopped calling. I didn't write back to Jasmine. What would I say? That I forgave her. I didn't. That I understood. I did, but understanding didn't change anything. She was in prison for 12 years because she'd spent 2 years helping Trevor Hastings exploit elderly people, starting with me. That was justice, painful but just. 3 years after the trial, something unexpected happened. I received a call from a woman named Helen Ortiz. She was 79, living in a different state. Mrs. Porter, you don't know me, but my daughter tried to have me declared incompetent last year. She used the same tactics your daughter used, stopped calling for months, hired someone to interview my neighbors, submitted false applications to care facilities. I fought back because I read about your case in a news article. You gave me the courage to defend myself. I'm glad you fought back. How did it turn out? I won. My daughter is facing criminal charges now, but Mrs. Porter. I'm calling because there are more of us. More elderly people who have faced this same exploitation pattern. We're forming a coalition. We want to push for federal legislation protecting elderly people from family exploitation. We want you to help lead it. May. You're the one who brought down Trevor Hastings. Your case exposed the whole scheme. Mrs. Porter, you could help change the laws to protect other elderly people from what you went through. I thought about that, about the 3 months of silence, about discovering my daughter's plot, about the court battles and the criminal trial, about the dozens of other elderly people who'd been targeted by the same scheme. I'll help. Tell me what you need. Over the next year, I became the face of the Elder Financial Protection Coalition. I testified before Congress. I appeared on news programs. I told my story over and over, not because I enjoyed reliving it, but because it helped other people recognize exploitation before it was too late. The legislation we pushed for became law 18 months later. The Elder Exploitation Prevention Act. It created stricter penalties for family members who defrauded elderly relatives. It required adult protective services to investigate claims of incompetence more thoroughly. It mandated that elderly people be provided with independent legal counsel before guardianship proceedings. It wouldn't prevent all exploitation, but it would make it harder. At the bill's signing, the president mentioned my case specifically. Vivian Porter fought back when her own daughter tried to steal her autonomy and her assets. Because she documented everything and refused to give up, she exposed a criminal enterprise that had targeted dozens of elderly people. Her courage led to this legislation that will protect countless others. I was 85 at the bill's signing, still healthy, still independent, still fighting. My family had stopped calling when I was 81. Then something changed. I discovered why, fought back, won, and turned my personal battle into systemic change. Jasmine still had 7 years left on her sentence. I was 85. Realistically, I might not live to see her released. That was a strange thought. My daughter might spend the rest of my life in prison for what she tried to do to me. But Aiden visited regularly. Zara, now 19, called me every Sunday. Kareen came for holidays. Kenneth stayed in touch, keeping me updated on the kids' lives. I had family, just not the family I'd expected to have at 85. 6 months after the bill signing, I received another letter from Jasmine. Mom, I saw you on the news, the bill signing, the interviews. You've turned what I did to you into something that will help thousands of people. I don't know how you found the strength to do that. After everything I put you through, you could have just lived quietly. Instead, you became an advocate. Mom, I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. You were always strong. I just didn't see it because I was looking at you as a resource instead of a person. I see it now. Too late to matter, but I see it. I have 7 years left. When I get out, if you're still alive, I don't expect a relationship. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know you're the strongest person I've ever known. And I'm sorry I tried to break you. Jasmine. I read the letter, and for the first time since this all began, I felt something soften inside me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that Jasmine was finally seeing clearly. I wrote back, one paragraph. Jasmine, thank you for seeing me as a person instead of a resource. That's progress. But you didn't try to break me. You tried to steal from me. There's a difference. I was never broken. I was fighting. And I won. Remember that. Mom. Now, at 85, I live in the house Jasmine tried to sell. I manage my own affairs. I advocate for elderly people facing exploitation. I spend time with grandchildren who know the whole story and love me anyway. My family stopped calling when I was 81. Then something changed. I discovered the plot, documented everything, fought back in court, pressed criminal charges, exposed a criminal enterprise, changed federal law, and built a new life as an advocate. What changed wasn't just that the silence ended. What changed was me. I stopped waiting for them to explain why they'd abandoned me. I stopped hoping they'd come back. I stopped seeing myself as a victim of my daughter's scheme. And I started seeing myself as what I actually was, a survivor who'd fought back and won. My family stopped calling. Then something changed. I did. I stopped being the confused, isolated elderly woman they'd tried to create through 3 months of deliberate silence. And I became the woman who brought down an entire exploitation operation, protected dozens of other elderly people, and changed the law. That's what happens when people assume silence means weakness. When they assume an 81-year-old woman will be too confused, too desperate for connection, too afraid of conflict to fight back. They assume wrong. My family stopped calling. I didn't break. I didn't beg. I documented, fought, won, and turned my pain into protection for others. That's the story. Not of an elderly woman, abandoned by her family. but of a woman who refused to be a victim and became a force for change instead. My family stopped calling. Then something changed. Everything,